Okay, good evening everybody and welcome to tonight's Town Council meeting. Before we formally start the meeting, can I ask the Council's Chaplain, Reverend Dr. Paul Edmondson, to say a few words?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Town Councillors. Good evening, everybody. Happy the person who has not let slip a careless word, who has never felt the sting of remorse. We all say things we wish we hadn't said, and especially during moments of pressure and stress. Words that felt good to speak at the time, we realise now were the result of fear or defensiveness or pride. We wish we could call them back. Happy the person who has not let slip a careless word, who has never felt the sting of remorse. All politicians know that language is power. Communication, the commitment to inform as well as to listen, is imperative within any healthy society. Within the Christian tradition, this week is known as Holy Week, the week in which Christians remember the commandment of Jesus that human beings love one another as he loves us. It's the week that recalls Jesus being betrayed by a friend, denied by another, his struggling alone with the knowledge of his imminent death, his suffering under the authority of Pontius Pilate, and his death on a cross. It's a week that shores up not only human carelessness, but also human cruelty. It's a week that bristles with remorse. Happy the person who has not let slip a careless word, who has never felt the sting of remorse. A bare wooden cross has been installed on the roundabout at the top of Bridge Street, Union Street, Henley Street, Wood Street, and High Street. That simple wooden cross is a reminder not only of what Christians believe, but also a reminder, whatever our beliefs, that we are called to communicate with honesty and care, and to listen to each other with compassion and understanding, that to love our neighbours means being on each other's side. Our different perspectives, like those 5 Stratford-upon-Avon streets, meet at the cross, where the market cross used to stand in Shakespeare's time. Mr. Mayor, Town Councillors and Town Clerk, I commend this evening's meeting to you. Happy the person who has not let slip a careless word, who has never felt the sting of remorse.
Thank you, Paul. Stay as long as you like, but just sneak off when you need to. That's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Okay. If then we start the meeting. So item number 1, to accept apologies for absence. Madam Town Clerk, do we have any apologies?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we've had apologies from Councillor Foytick and Councillor Wall.
Thank you. Item number 2 is declarations of interest on items on the agenda. Does anybody have anything to declare? No. Thank you. Item number 3 is to receive.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Cleeve put her hand up.
Oh, did she? Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, just presentation, obviously, from the Stratford Town Trust Riverside. I'm a trustee for that.
Thank you. Councillor Coles.
Also Town Trust trustee, so
yeah, I also need to declare that I'm a Town Trust trustee. Please, could I ask you to raise your virtual hands if you want to speak? It's much easier for me to see on my screen that you've raised your hand.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, okay. Right. Written requests. Have we had any written requests? No. So we don't need to grant any written requests. Item number 5 is public participation. I don't think we've got any members of the public in the room, so the speakers have got allocated spots. So there's no public speaking. So item number 6 is to approve the draft open minutes of the Town Council meeting held on the 26th of January 2021. I beg to move. Has anybody got any questions arising, or can we just go straight to a poll to accept? Okay, in that case, can you vote, please?
Can you see the
Sorry,
results?
Mr. Mayor,
you,
I
Phil.
can't get my voting thing to work. I do apologise.
Is the poll popped up on your screen, Councillor Rolfe?
Oh, there you go. Is it the green tick, yeah?
No, there should be. You should have a little pop-up box doing a poll.
I haven't got that, Mr. Mayor. I'm just put up my I've just put a
Yes,
big
it does
tick.
now.
All right. In that case, that's unanimous. I can see. Thank you. So item number 7, to approve the open minutes of the Planning Consultative Committee meetings. Can I ask Councillor Ian Fradgley to lead on this, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to present the open minutes of the Planning Consultative Committee meeting on the 2nd of March, minutes 388 to 403, and on the 23rd of March, minutes 404 to 419. I beg to move.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions arising? In which case, could we relaunch the poll, please? Thank you. Thank you. Carried. Fine. Item number 8 is to adopt the draft open minutes of the Personnel Committee meeting held on the 16th of February. Can I ask Councillor Voss to lead, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to present the open minutes of the Personnel Committee meeting, which was held on the 16th of February of 2021, and I beg to move.
Thank you. Any questions arising? In which case, can we relaunch the poll? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask that Councillor Voss also presents the confidential minutes?
I'd be delighted to, and I would similarly present the confidential minutes which we discussed at that meeting, and I beg to move those.
Thank you. Can you vote? Yeah. Thank you. Item number 9 is to adopt the open minutes of the Finance and Audit Committee meeting held on the 9th of March. Councillor Coles.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to present the minutes of the Finance and Audit Committee of the 9th of March 2021. I beg to move.
Thank you. Any questions arising? In which case, can we relaunch the poll? Thank you. Item number 10, to adopt the draft open minutes of the Civic, Heritage and Events Committee meeting held on the 16th of March. Councillor Rolfe, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to present the draft open minutes of the Civic, Heritage and Events Committee meeting held on the 16th of March. I beg to move.
Thank you. Any questions arising? No. In which case, can we poll, please? Thank you. Thank you. Item number 11, to adopt the notes from the various meetings we've had relating to the COVID-19 Stratford Support Group. Councillor Rolfe again, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to present the notes from the COVID-19 Stratford support meetings held on the 26th of January, 2nd of February, 9th of February, 16th of February, 23rd of February, 2nd of March, 9th of March, 16th of March and the 23rd of March. I beg to move.
Thank you. Any questions, anybody? No, in which case can we vote again, please? Thank you. Item number 12, to adopt the notes from the Town Centre and Town Traffic Task and Finish Group meetings held on the 9th of February and the 3rd of March. Councillor Voss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would like to present the notes from the Town Centre and Town Traffic Task and Finish Group meetings, which were held on the 9th of February and the 3rd of March, and I would beg to move.
Thank you. Any questions? Can we poll, please? Thank you. Thank you. And item number 13, to adopt the minutes from the Youth Council meetings held on the 4th of February and the 4th of March. Can I ask the Chair, Aidan Drinkwater, to respond, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to present the minutes from the Youth Town Council meetings held on the 4th of February and the 4th of March. I beg to.
Thank you. Any questions? No. Can we poll, please? Thank you. Thank you. Right, we now have 3 separate presentations, so I'm delighted to welcome the speakers here tonight. So first of all, could I introduce Dr. Robert Williams on the White Ribbon campaign. Dr. Williams, can you start?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, thank you. Yep.
I've sent a PowerPoint presentation and to your colleagues. So are we able to see that? Is that you, Lisa?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Can everyone see that?
Yep, that's up.
That's cool. Thank you very much. Okay, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. My background is that I worked in the NHS for 20 years doing jobs like district nursing, social work, health visiting, health promotion, that kind of thing. And I was dealing with child abuse and death and dying and violence in that work. But towards the end of my time in the NHS, I started to do projects with dads, with men in families, because it seems to me that the strengths and assets of men in families are often not realized, and services don't always successfully engage men. So part of what I want to talk to you about today is about the strengths and assets of men and how we could develop those to tackle a serious and important set of issues around violence towards women and girls. But I suppose my main reason for wanting to speak to you is because I'm not a professional anymore. I'm an artist. And I wanted to talk to you because I'm a dad. I think about my daughter, Roisin. I'm a husband. I think about my partner, Kaz, my sister, Viv, and other women in this room and in the wider community. So from my point of view, what White Ribbon does, it gives an opportunity to address some of the issues around violence towards women and girls. And I'd like to talk to you about that for a few minutes. Next slide, please. You may well be aware of these kind of indicators, but I'll just speak to these very briefly. The evidence suggests that at least 1.3 million women each year experience domestic violence. Up until 2020, in that year, there were over 55,000 rapes reported and only 1,439 convictions. In research for Loughborough University, a team there found out that 50% of women experience unwanted touching. And this bit of data here is really horrible and disturbing. 30% of girls are harassed on the way to or from school. And since I wrote this on Friday, I've been reading about and hearing stories about sexual abuse in private schools, And the ex-chancellor, Sava Javid, has produced a report about sexual abuse within the home during lockdown. So these are terrible, horrible, serious issues. And I want to talk to you about one way of trying to tackle this. Next slide, please. So White Ribbon is a global campaign. It's operating in 60 countries. And the key goal is that men like me, like the men in this room, men in Stratford-upon-Avon, will never commit, excuse, or remain silent about male violence against women. So never commit, excuse, or remain silent about male violence against women. Next slide, please. I think one of the slides has been missed there, but that's okay. Oh, are we going back? Thank you, Lisa. Okay, next. Okay, I'll speak to this slide then. Thank you very much, Lisa. I appreciate your help. One of the things I was thinking about when I was writing this PowerPoint presentation on Friday is about the nature of being a man. And I started to think about my dad. My dad was, he's dead now. My dad, Cliff, was a very kind, sensitive, generous, loving man. He was also a bit of an artist, and that's what I do now. And he taught me a lot. He taught me a lot about what kind of man I could be. I eventually became a nurse and did all those welfare jobs. But there's a key tension here between, on the one hand, some men were dominant, controlling, abusive, seeking power in families and communities, who present risks, serious risks. On the other hand, there are other men like us here who have more respect for women, passionate and caring. And this tension is what we need to deal with. Next slide, please. And the next slide. So what White Ribbon asks men to do specifically is to do two simple but highly important things. First of all, to wear a white ribbon, like this. Wear a white ribbon, which will lead to conversation with boys, young men, and men. And last November, I sent each of the councillors a white ribbon, but also I created a new, unique image of white ribbon, and hopefully you may have received them by now. I know there was some delays in that respect. So wearing a white ribbon is a way of having discourse between boys, young men, and men. It's about having conversations to emphasize the importance of respect and tolerance and love for women and girls, and to try and make sure for boys and young men that abuse and violence is not how they live their lives. I was listening to Radio 4 this morning on the Today programme, which some of you may listen to, and there were some young men talking about what they call rape culture within schools and how it's shaped by social media. And as far as we know, sexual violence, physical violence towards women is there in all cultures and goes back over thousands of years. So White Ribbon is asking men like us to wear a white ribbon, have these conversations, and take some responsibility to explain to boys, young men, and other men that it's got to stop. The second simple task is an online promise, and that's to never commit, excuse, or remain silent about male violence against women. What we can do is go online to the White Ribbon website, takes a few minutes, and make a commitment in that respect. Next slide, please. The question then is, why focus the campaign on men? When I used to work in public health, it was always clear to us, the evidence backs this up, is if we take a generalized approach towards this and refer to people, then in those circumstances, men may think, it's not about me, it's about some other men over there. It's not about my family. We know, though, globally, historically, men commit most of the violence in terms of sexual violence, domestic violence. And the other reason why White Ribbon asked us men to do something about this important issue is that women's organisations work with White Ribbon and they want men to take more responsibility. It's not just women's responsibility to deal with this issue. So we're not so much talking about CCTV or street lighting, and street lighting is a very important issue in Stratford. It's about changes in the way in which men think, feel, and act. And in thinking about men in this room and men within this community, men can help others to think about these issues. They can be assets, they can be strengths within our community. Next slide, please. Of course, there are obstacles. I think for many men, this issue is seen as too dark, disturbing, or confusing, or horrifying. It's not necessarily seen as being about me, about my family, or my behavior. Some men might have rigid notions about what it means to be a man, or even are scared of being perceived as feminine. And one of my sins, I love football, and I go on football websites, and it's pretty clear that many men have quite distorted beliefs about control, coercion, abuse, and violence. There are some obstacles there. Next slide, please. But it seems to me things are changing in some respects, and there are grounds for optimism about men being involved in change to try and help prevent violence against women and girls. Next slide, please. First of all, why can men be involved in this? First of all, most men know that coercion, control, abuse, and violence is wrong. Secondly, and this is really important in thinking about these issues and trying to communicate with men, is men's own mothers, sisters, friends, daughters, wives, work colleagues, lovers may have experienced or been affected by abuse and violence. It is personal. It is about me. When I'm talking to you now, I do think about my partner, Kaz, and my daughter, Roshni, and my sister, Viv. This is personal, but it is also about the community in which we live. And the third point I want to emphasize in terms of the grounds for optimism is that caring practices in families in our society are changing. Over the last 40, 50 years, it's clear that the nature of fatherhood is shifting. Next slide, please. The evidence around this is pretty solid. While there's, on the one hand, there's no evidence to suggest that men are doing more domestic labor, like cleaning the toilets, there is evidence that men over the last 40 or 50 years are more actively involved in their children's lives, spending more time with them, and involved in caring. And so the opportunity is there for us to help boys, young men and men, think about their relationships with women in a more positive, more appropriate and tolerant way are real, it seems to me. There are additionally projects around the country being run by voluntary organisations and charities. There's something called the Great Project, which works with secondary schools around these issues. Good Lad is another project working with boys and young men in sports teams, colleges, and so on. And there's an organisation in London called Working with Men, who I used to work with, but doing similar work. Next slide, please. But the essence of this is that these conversations, this issue of change around awareness and beliefs, is about us men. It's about relationships between men and boys, between granddads and grandsons. Next slide, please. Love, equality, and respect. Next slide, please. So White Ribbon is involved in a range of different projects. One's focused on unrelated violence. Next slide. There are issues around music venues and safety in clubs, and there's some projects going on around that. Next slide. There's a focus on local authorities, and over 30 local authorities in the country now are accredited with White Ribbon, and I'll explain what that means in a little while. Next slide. There's work with trade unions. Next slide. Sports campaigns. This is a really important and valuable way around football and rugby and so on. Next slide. and White Ribbon has a network of ambassadors. This is quite a posh term for people like me. I'm the local contact. I have the responsibility as a volunteer to raise people's awareness, and that's why I'm speaking to you today. I'm an ambassador. Next slide, please. So this is the $64,000 question. What can you do? And I guess you have these kind of talks all the time, asking for your time and resources and commitment. But it seems to me that we're at a time now where there's an opportunity for change. So what I'm asking is that the Town Council support White Ribbon. And secondly, to pursue this work, one of the male councillors becomes an ambassador for White Ribbon. That's a local contact. Or it could be a woman champion. Now, why women are called champions and men are called ambassadors, I'm not entirely sure. It's a decision by White Ribbon. But I think the essence of it is that as men, we should do more work around this. We should be the ambassadors, and we work alongside women champions. The third point is that I would ask that as part of your communication with local businesses, services, schools and organisations, you promote White Ribbon. And I think a specific focus on engaging boys regarding domestic violence is absolutely crucial. In a sense, this focus on engaging boys is a form of primary prevention. It's a kind of public health activity that we're looking for long-term implications. Possibly, maybe you may be able to put the White Ribbon logo on your website and signage and social media. You could advocate staff wear a white ribbon. And on November the 25th and subsequent days, there are a series of actions around White Ribbon Day. So these are the sorts of things I believe are necessary now. They've always been necessary, but at the moment there's a national conversation about these issues, and it would seem a good time to tackle these kind of issues. Next slide, please. But if you're willing to consider a more structural approach, what White Ribbon offers is accreditation, and that is to develop a 3-year action plan with you with a focus on strategic leadership, engaging men and boys, changing the culture in this organisation and raising awareness. So people like me will continue to attempt to raise awareness of these issues locally, but the accreditation process is a more structural look at how to tackle these issues. Next slide, please. Right, great. Okay, I hope I haven't gone too long. Your questions, open to you.
That's great. Thank you very much. If anybody's got a question, can you raise your virtual hand, please? Yes, Councillor Rolfe first.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was very interesting, Dr. Williams. May I ask 2 very brief questions? One is, have you been to the District Council and given this presentation? Because you may or may not be aware that at the District Council we have respect champions, men and women as respect champions. And also, how much work are you doing within schools? And if you are doing work within schools, are you just concentrating on the higher schools or primary and junior schools? Thank you.
The answer to your first question, no, I haven't. Hello, are you still there? I haven't done a presentation for the District Council, but I'd be happy to do so. That'd be lovely. Secondly, in terms of schools, no, I haven't done much work about that. I've been ill. I've had medical treatment over the last period of time, so that's my next task. I will be contacting schools, and my work there will be to speak to the staff. I think the complex work of working with children and young people will be down to teachers and youth workers. But yes, that's what I plan to do next. But hopefully, I could do so with your support.
Thank you. Well, if I may just come back on that, I'm quite happy to bring this forward to the next Respect Champions meeting that we have at the District Council. Councillor Cleave is on this committee and on the Respect Champions group, and I'm sure it's something that would be quite interesting for our group to hear.
Thank you very much. That'd be lovely.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Fradgley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bob, I wanted to ask you, do you think that there's any difference or differentiation between boys who go to a mixed school as opposed to those who go to single-sex schools?
The answer to that question is simple. I don't know.
Ah.
I don't know. If you wanted to study this in more depth, there is a gender violence research group based at Bristol University, headed by Professor Marion Hester, and they look at the trends around these issues, but also look at interventions and policies, these sorts of things. But the answer to this question, I don't know. My apologies.
Councillor Cleave.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Williams, as well. It was a great presentation, and thank you also for the image you sent us of Christmas. So mine's proudly up on the wall. You talk obviously about ambassadors and champions for male and females. Is there something you have in mind for us to actually take it forward? Should somebody be interested in taking up one of those roles? I know you've given us a general overview, but what would you like us as either those individual positions or as a town council to go forward?
Well, if somebody was willing to do that, to volunteer to do that, that'd be fabulous. I'd be very happy to work with them. I guess from my point of view, the biggest priority is focusing on schools. So what I plan to do over the next year is to contact schools and to try and have these kind of experiences, these kind of conversations with the staff around these kind of issues. So that would be my priority. But it seems to me that there are other opportunities around sports clubs and youth services, those sorts of things. Potential is endless. Just need the people, the time, and the energy to do it, really.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jenny Fradgley.
I thought Councillor Cleave might have mentioned it, but we do have a youth council, and this might be a suitable topic at some point for the youth council to take up for presentation.
Yeah, I think one of your colleagues was here previously.
Yes. Yeah.
Is he still here?
No, I don't think Aidan's with us anymore. He's probably like he's left the meeting. But
I think Councillor Cleave might want to actually follow that up.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. On the agenda, we've got our next youth council meeting on Thursday, and we've got future thoughts on the agenda. So that was something I was going to mention to them on Thursday, especially after this presentation. I'm going to encourage them to watch this video back and then bring it to the youth council.
That'd be lovely.
Right, can't see any more hands up, in which case can I just say thank you very much to Dr. Williams for presenting, and I'm really pleased that we've actually had the opportunity. Do you want to say something, Mr. Williams?
Yeah, is anybody who has reservations about what White Ribbon is trying to do? Are there any disadvantages? Is there a downside?
Well, I'd like to think that the men on the council are all fully supportive and adhere to your views and have them through our lives. But we'll see how we go. We got some hands up. Councillor Cleave again. Yep.
Yeah, thanks. I personally don't see it as a downside, but I have seen some questions where people are going, is this taking it away from women's groups who essentially talk about the same thing? But I think you've addressed that anyway. In the conversation, it's about encouraging men as opposed to the women encouraging men, and men encouraging men seems to be better. But have you come across that where when people are going, well, it's a women's issue, so women should be dealing with it?
Yes, I understand that. And I think you see, in a sense, this is a kind of solidarity, of support for women. Women I know who work in health visiting, who work in refuges, who work in dealing with rape, my friends. But it's also, I think, something really positive for men. It's about saying, we're different to those other men. We have something to offer, and we're not going to remain silent about this. So I think that while on the one hand it is about respecting women and solidarity with them, on the other hand, this is an opportunity for men now. With my son Colin, we before COVID, we went out to the RSC space outside the RSC, and I knocked a leaflet and we handed out white ribbons. It was unbelievable. It was astonishing. You will have been involved in campaigning all your lives, I guess, as councillors, or you may have done some marketing, and people often say, oh, I don't want to know. But around this issue, it was astonishing. The response from men and women was really, really positive. So I think this is an opportunity, and it's about saying we're real men, we're virile, masculine men who want to make it clear to other men that we're against this violence and we can do something about it.
Thank you.
Could I ask one final question? Like, I've taken a lot of your time. Is it possible that I would know if the council were to support White Ribbon? Would you take a vote? How would this be handled?
Well, I've got a couple more hands up, but I'll summarise at the end when we've finished with the questions. Yeah, okay. Councillor Jenny Fradgley.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to make a comment that, I mean, I've got 3 very young grandsons, and it really very much concerns me the way in which they will, I mean, they're very young at the moment, 2 and 9, but how they're growing up needs to be valued. I think sometimes young boys might be feeling that they're not as valued or they're dangerous. So the way in which this is handled with young people, I think, is very important.
Yes, and my response to that, Jenny, is that the way we have to approach this is really, really positive, it seems to me, in the sense that thinking about the way in which boys and men can play a positive role in families is the way we start with this. And so these kind of initiatives around raising awareness, changing people's beliefs and attitudes is a way of empowering boys. And I think that this destructive effect of abuse and violence is certainly there for women, but it's destroying boys' lives as well. So it's equally significant for boys and young men.
Boys mustn't grow up to feel that they're pariahs, though. They must actually grow up to be valuable members of society.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Okay, and finally, Councillor Voss.
Yeah, so I endorse absolutely everything you've been saying, and as someone who has never knowingly walked by a situation where any form of violence or bullying has occurred, what I do find is, though, that I have made a personal decision never to wear badges or ribbons because I could be wearing them forever. Black Lives Matter, AIDS, White Ribbon, anti-discrimination. This is about man's inhumanity to man, and I do think that it's sadly a significant minority, but only a minority. But I do find, and I attend a lot of meetings, and I go on marches, and I present myself properly and and I kind of endorse what the Reverend Paul Edmondson was saying before. We've all slipped at some time. We've all said something inappropriate. You know, we are human and weak. But I hope you won't think bad if I never wear a badge or a ribbon, because that doesn't indicate who I am. And we've seen lately that wearing badges do not necessarily mean, or ribbons, that one is absolutely committed to that ethos. So I just put that in. I know it's a strong symbol, and I understand that, but I find that, you know, I could be the badge man of Stratford-upon-Avon otherwise. So I hope you appreciate that as well, Bob.
I understand.
Thank you. And I would like to bring this to a close, but Councillor Curtis, if you've got a quick point, we'll...
Just, it's very, very timely. I've got 2 daughters, I can't quite believe, but they're in their mid-30s, and I, you know, chatting to them and my wife over the last couple of weeks, they have, I mean, I was really shocked. I mean, this is something that does, I'm sure, affect all of us. And sort of conversations, oh, do you, you know, when you go out, do you always put keys in your fist? Yeah, of course I do, Dad. I always look for a safe way home. I never get a taxi. And I think it's really just those sort of brief conversations has really brought across to me how different, and I didn't, you know, I've got 2 daughters and I'm married, how different women's experience of life is So Bob, absolutely commend everything that you're doing. And I think I just wanted to say those things, because if any of us thinks that it doesn't affect us or doesn't affect our wives, daughters, friends, please think again. It jolly well does.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you, Chairman.
Right. Thank you. Right. Just to summarise, I don't think we've got time now to go into a debate amongst councillors as to how best we progress. But I think, looking around the room, I think I'm confident that the council will be fully supportive of doing something. And I just think we need to get our thoughts together and reflect on what you've said and decide how best to move it forward. I mean, certainly things like the 25th of November day was obviously something we could support. That wouldn't be a problem. And trying to identify opportunities, so the youth council or schools or whatever, where we can help put you in front of an audience to speak. And I suspect, are you the only ambassador in Stratford? I suspect you probably will be. So if we can find a councillor who's able to come forward and be an ambassador alongside you, that would be great. But in the initial period, we'll feed any opportunities through you, and hopefully we can spread the message.
Okay, and will I hear by a specific time, specific date? Will I get some feedback?
I'm not going to commit to a time scale on this, but it's one of those. It's finding the right medium for the councillors to get together. But we'll think about it, and we'll probably get together offline and decide how best to progress, and we'll get back to you. But
thank you very much.
Yeah, you won't be forgotten. And we're glad that we've had this opportunity for you to speak, because obviously it's been streamed, so you've at least reached a wider audience than you would if you'd have actually come into a real meeting in the council, I think, because we'll have more people watching online. So, okay, thank you very much. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you wish, but feel free to leave if you've had enough.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Right, on to the next presentation, which is from Simon Hircon on Project Damascus. Simon, are you there? Yep.
Hi, you okay?
Yep.
Yeah, I've got my presentation. If I can share my screen, I don't know if I've got the ability to do that.
Lisa, can you share?
Yeah, that's set up for you.
Excellent. Okay, well, hi everyone. I'm calling from Atherton, which is on the borders of Bolton, Wigan, and my colleague Adam Tapley's dialing in from Buxton. And just like to say thank you so much for inviting us into your virtual town council meeting. And a big theme of what we've been doing for the last 3 months is really what an opportunity it has been to accelerate research without necessarily having to spend time traveling. How can I study Stratford? I came to Stratford with my parents, so moved to Stratford-upon-Avon when I was 19, took on some temporary work in between my university days. So I've worked as a waiter in a restaurant. I've worked in the back store of Argos as well. So a glamorous experience of the Stratford economy. But this project really came about, it's a culmination of a lot of work I've been doing with the Travel Spirit Foundation. We've been going for 4 years, established really by Transport for Greater Manchester in partnership with Transport for the West Midlands, really to address a gap. And it kind of came about when Uber was really beginning to land internationally. A real need for local authorities, cities, towns to think differently about what's happening with technology. I think as a local authority, we're very used to maybe buying technology, but when technology is actually happening out there, you know, how do we engage with that? And that's really what we've been doing, is taking that to a European stage, where we've been really advocating, you know, a much more open discussion around public policy and how that can work and integrate with technology with a specific area of transport. And some of the impacts we've had, we presented our work to an inquiry for mobility as a service. We inspired the government's approach to the future of mobility, and brought in a lot of the concepts. But the key message which we keep championing, and really this project has been fantastic in terms of actually finally living out our values, is to find politicians with that type of open mindset. And I will talk through our project in a minute, but it's been astounding the warmth we've received across South Warwickshire for our project, and that there just seems to be a fit, and that fit is also with our colleagues in Canterbury as well. But it takes a certain mindset to see that we can do something, and I'll present what we've been up to. And our project closes on Wednesday, so today I can really just conclude all of the research which we've done. But the project itself is commissioned by UK Cabinet Office. It was a 3-month study, and it was really on the back of a kind letter of support from Stratford Town Council by Councillor Jenny Fradgley and the city leader of Canterbury, which is how we secured our work. So what's the context here? The context here really is around the online shopping. Clearly, what we probably say is it's over lockdown. Of course, everyone's moved across to the online, but the key feature is that for many people, we're not going to go back. Me, for example, I'm tall and lanky. Going shopping for jeans was never a pleasure. It's a lot easier to buy online, and overall, this particular graph says it all. You know, 90% of online shoppers use Amazon, and then what you can see here on the slide is the range of retailers who are doing better during this crisis than some of the other retailers. That said, we've still got John Lewis there, and they've had to reconsider some of their property portfolio. But you know, this is the context which we're going in. The other context is what is that what does that mean for the parcel companies since 2009 deregulated? It means that they're enjoying an incredible amount of growth, but maybe growth which is quite difficult to handle. So, you know, if you think about before we had online websites, most of parcel traffic was B2B. Hubs and spokes works really well. Ever since the online phenomenon happened, the cost and implication, the sheer cost of delivery is very challenging, met with a consumer desire. Just like how consumers never like to pay for their parking, consumers don't like to pay for their delivery. So you have a lot of price pressure, and Amazon's added to that by providing an incredible extra capacity into the UK system. So it's a highly competitive environment. So, you know, Office of the Regulator has told us there's 16 carriers in operation. Our data shows, you know, there's about 8 who are carrying, you know, the majority of the traffic. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll actually hand over to my colleague Adam, who will explain what we seek to do to improve that situation.
Okay. Hello all, thank you for inviting us to the meeting. I'm a friend of Simon's from a while ago, and I was brought into the project because my background, I'm an engineer, but my background in career-wise is all supply chain, logistics, warehousing, and that sort of thing. So I've been brought on board from for the operations point of view. As regards to the project, Project Damascus starts from the practical point of view, starts at the outskirts of town, where we're targeting small to medium towns. There's lots of work has been done on large cities, London, Manchester, Birmingham, but we're looking at the smaller towns, basically to try and stop, if you look at the slide, the top half of the slide, the multitude of different carriers with diesel vans driving around towns, overlapping each other, delivering parcels everywhere. We plan to, at the outskirts of town, have a consolidation hub, a micro consolidation centre, which will accept all parcels, ideally from all the major carriers, and consolidate them into our own vehicles, which will be largely electric and hopefully eventually all electric, which will then do the last mile delivery into town. The consolidation will mean that there aren't overlapping rounds. One vehicle will do one area instead of 16 potentially vehicles doing the same area. Just as an aside, I've got a part-time job at the moment as a courier for Hermes, which certain circumstances have led me to do that for a while, which has given me a very good inside view of the whole operation. And I do part rural and part in town at Buxton. And every day I come across, many times I come across different carriers, sometimes queuing up at the same house as I am. So duplicating work, duplicating fumes, duplicating sort of miles used on vehicles and all that sort of thing. So the idea is to basically stop at the outskirts of town and have one system, which is largely an invisible system. We're not planning to take business off these carriers. We are just taking their parcels just for the last part of the trip. They will sort of contribute towards us for doing that, but they will still remain as an Amazon parcel, as a DPD parcel, as a Hermes parcel, but it will be with our infrastructure and our transport which will do it. Just to give you some figures, as we get towards full electric vehicles, we will save about 30% on the amount of couriers that are needed to do this, but there will be other sides and niches within the business which we can hope to re-employ these people, so it's not a big job loss. There is, and these are partly from other projects which have proven these statistics as well, which match our figures, a 40% reduction in mileage of vehicles actually delivering the parcels. And when we get towards 100% electric vehicles, 80%, more than 80% reduction in CO2 emissions within the town and district area. So it's all round its benefits. So that's the general idea. Obviously, town centres will be less cluttered. There will be a lot less vans, and the air will be a lot cleaner. And the idea is for this hub to be part of the community, because people will see, maybe they'll be all liveried up transport, so people will see the same logo transport driving around, and will be part of the community. We hope to integrate with local shops and retailers if they want to do you shop, we drop type situation, when people will buy goods, but they want to walk around Stratford. Sorry, yes?
Yeah, so if I could get you to move on to the next slide. If that's
okay, yeah.
I'll touch on some of those points later, yeah.
Okay, right. Just going back from the micro consolidation centre that I spoke about is ideally going to be close to the town centre, but not in the town centre, so that the larger trucks coming in won't actually come into town, ideally 2 or 3 miles from the town centre. For somewhere like Stratford, the site would need to be sort of 300 to 500 square metres with quite a lot of parking, because there'll be 30 plus couriers which need to deal with the area. And we would hope to be looking after the vans. They'll need to be plugged in, and also, I didn't mention earlier, we plan to use e-cargo bikes. So for real town centre, small goods, prescriptions, smaller parcels, and places for pedestrianised areas, we plan to use electric bikes. So that's the plan there. And we've spoken with various people in Warwick and Warwick District Council and Stratford, and there's a possibility of using things like park and ride areas, which are not always used, particularly at night, where we can sort of partner up and use these facilities. The slide you're looking at now is basically an example of an area where the area shown will be used by all carriers every day. And our idea is to split them up. So you see the different color codes on the chart. A van would cover the red area, one would cover the blue, one would cover the green, but only one vehicle would be in there. Whereas currently it will be 16, potentially 16 vehicles would be in there driving around. So that is, in a nutshell, what we're hoping to achieve with the consolidation. And the numbers all stack up. The key thing is to get a large number of the carriers on board. There are lots of benefits, because that part of the service is actually the messiest part of the supply chain. So we just need to get into further conversations with them just to work together and find out what benefits both sides. This slide shows the extent. It's not just the town centre, for example, Stratford, but also the rural areas up to 6 or 8 miles surrounding, which we would aim to deliver to as well. So that would be, it sort of adds a few thousand more people onto the area, as long as none of those actually are large towns, because then they would have a separate hub going forward into the future.
In the case of Stratford, you know, we've been kindly provided population numbers by Stratford District Council, and we're looking at 30,000 in the town and another 30,000 within 6 miles. So it is an important aspect of the Stratford proposal.
Yes. And interestingly enough, from my own experience, there's as many deliveries to rural areas as there are to town centres, because typically, especially if older people, they're not going to keep driving into town or into cities to get the parcels. They're more likely to want them delivered anyway, even without COVID. So this slide just gives you an idea. Our fleet of vehicles, we would start, because of the scarcity to some extent of batteries for these vehicles, there would start to be a mixture of electric and diesel vans, but they would tend to be smaller, sort of small, large car-sized vans, as you can see, in some micro vans, so that the impact on the environment and on the built-up areas is kept to a minimum. And I know from personal experience that it can be done with a small van, because I use a car rather than a van, and I get the job done with that. And as you can see, cargo bikes for the tighter areas, pedestrianised areas, and sort of keeping as much transport out of the real town centre as possible.
Excellent, thank you, Adam. And just to add, we awarded this project with the support of Warwick Manufacturing Group in University of Warwick, and actually thanks to the support of Stratford Climate Action and Connecting Stratford, we were also connected with Coventry University, where a professor there actually has his own company, a circular economy company called Microcab, and we're beginning to develop a relationship there to really think about, as Adam says, when we start, we'll need to work with vehicles which we can get from the open market. But looking at the future, you know, we have a particular operational requirement. We need our van to work a 60-mile range, so we can in the future have our vehicles bespoke, so we can really optimize the batteries we're using, and that can take a lot of weight out of the vehicle and provide greater efficiencies as well. In terms of the study work, it has been desktop. We've dedicated most of the time to really validating and researching the customers' needs, as well as other stakeholders, to really discern a good project. We got a representative sample across all sexes and age groups, and that they were drawn from Stratford-upon-Avon area and Canterbury. What that gave is some real insights into the concerns people have for online shopping. So this is a slide which shows the differences, but also the commonalities across different age groups, for example, in terms of people's concerns. So to interpret this graph, you can see that 50% of young people under 18, it's about climate change. But when you look at the 19 to 34-year-olds, it's actually about, they're actually a group who use online shopping heavily. And you can see that actually as a result of being very, very into their digital products, they don't have a concern about the high street as much as others. It's not as black and white as that, but it's not their leading concern. But maybe because of their age, they know more couriers, and they also do more online shopping, so they're getting to know their couriers. They're concerned about the working conditions. And of course, that's been emphasised in the news recently with the Deliveroo scandal. But what's common here is that climate is important. What's also important is the pollution from the vehicles, and also the packaging. And the packaging's interesting. We can't necessarily directly do much about the packaging, but we have been talking to Leamington Business Improvement District, who are thinking that our hub could be used to help consolidate and recycle the cardboard packaging waste from shops, for example. We also asked the respondents, if we were to create something like Damascus, what extra value could you provide? And again, a sort of range with some common themes, but clearly, you know, local shops do appear amongst the older groups, and the desire though to have free delivery from those local shops. And I think that's kind of the reality in terms of online. that if you're an Amazon Prime member, you get everything for free. So, you know, it's quite hard for the local economy to compete in some cases. But it's also picked up some important things like an evening delivery option, thinking about as the shops reopen, as the economy reopens and we go back to work, if we're looking to retain some of that online behaviour, there's going to be, you know, a stronger need for a higher level of convenience if you're not in. We use those insights to create a video, which I will just play, because I think Adam's describes the solution quite well, but this is what we're using to gain further stakeholder support and education of our project. And to touch on that, the additional idea has actually taken us by surprise in terms of becoming almost a project in its own right. It's something which we're progressing quite keenly with Canterbury City Council and the Business Improvement District there, where they see that as actually having a really important relevance to the sort of here and now of the next few months. And to start really reimagining how how our town centre functions. You know, in terms of some of the questions I've received around that, people asked, well, don't all the bulky goods get sold at the Maybird, for example? And I'll sort of explain that that's not really what we're trying to say. We're trying to sort of solve a problem of having, you might be able to carry that shopping home yourself, but it's beginning to interfere with what else you want to do in the town. And a good example for that might be that exhaustion. You've shopped in town, but you are beginning laden with your shopping, so you decide to go home, and you've missed out on the opportunity of staying in town to enjoy an evening meal, or coffee, or meeting up with a friend. And so that's really what that added value offer is. Naturally, there is also links with promoting more active travel, cycling, walking, public transport into town, if you don't need to take your shopping home. In terms of who we've engaged with, it's been quite extensive. I'd say the focus has been with gaining further local authority support. So in the case of South Warwickshire, which I can proudly say that this study started with the town council. We've had the district on board, Warwick Council on board, Dave Barber, who's coming over to have a joint responsibility across both Warwick and Stratford districts councils for climate change, has offered to be our champion moving forward into what we hope will be a phase 2 of this study. And also a strong engagement by the LEP and through that with Warwickshire County Council. And discussions have been progressing quite well. We've had it confirmed that our proposals have got 100% alignment with the local transport plan update, which the county are producing, and beginning to explore what can we hope to receive in terms of support for this scheme. And I'll come on to that later. But also amongst the private sector, as I say, I think at this early stage, the best engagement has been with the business improvement districts. I think we've been a bit too early to really engage more directly with the retailers, but that's something we would like to do in a phase 2. But we have at least had a conversation with the store manager at Boots in Stratford as well, so sort of understood and got his support for our scheme. And that's how some of the ideas around prescription have come about, not for Boots itself, but maybe some of the independent pharmacies would appreciate that type of service. We've talked to Pashley. Of course, you know, we hear that Pashley will be releasing their first e-cargo bike later this year. So very keen to work with them too. At a national level, Enterprise Rent-A-Car have shown an interest in terms of potential co-location of our facility with a car club. And but what's also most important is the sheer amount of grassroots support we've got, which is how we started in Stratford through Stratford Climate Action, but now a similar movement within Canterbury, where we've got the full support of what's known as the Alliance of Canterbury Residents Associations. So that what they've done in Canterbury is to pull together and create a stronger voice, really trying to move away from maybe some of the NIMBY reputation residents associations have, and now working quite closely with us to develop our scheme.
Yeah. So Simon, can just how long has your presentation got to go? I'm just mindful of time. I don't want to give people opportunity to ask questions.
Exactly. Apologies, I didn't really manage members' expectations. I'm pretty much there. so in short, we've developed both the offer and for us the opportunity. So we in terms of the commercial opportunity, we're providing a platform, so we're providing the technology to enable this to happen. But what we're looking for is the carriers to take part, and that might be at a strategic level or maybe at a more tactical level, and they will receive a benefit because of our consolidation efficiencies. But then also a local, the operator of the hub itself, creating what I would call green jobs. So transferring some of the work of a courier to making things more efficient by sorting the parcels locally, and then what we call a mobility as a service provider who would provide us the vehicles. So yes, apologies for a slight overrun, and you know, very much like to receive questions.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Councillor Ian Fradgley.
Thank you, Chair. Simon, one of the problems we have in Stratford, which is obviously pinpointed, and everybody is complaining about, is traffic and the bridge. With your view of having hubs, would you have more than one, like one north of the river and one south of the river, to prevent delivery lorries having to cross the river? Thank you.
It's a very good question, and in fact, that was very much when I submitted my proposal. My understanding of the logistics network wasn't quite there, and bringing Adam on board has really enlightened us all about how things actually work. So in short, at the moment, what's happening is the trucks are delivering to to various courier addresses around town. And what we do is have one hub, and it would need to just be one hub. Operationally, to split it would not work. But by having a hub, we move the time. So instead of the trucks turning up at a courier's house at 9 o'clock, they're going to probably serve our hub much earlier in the morning. So not conflict so much with the peak traffic. So that's kind of the way in which we subtly address that issue.
Thank you. Councillor Warren Howells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Simon Adam. That was really interesting. I'm the vice chair of the climate group for the town, so I think it's really good what you're doing. So it was a very interesting presentation. 2 questions if I can. I think you possibly covered it, Simon, about the carriers. I wondered what the carriers actually think about it. You said there's a benefit possibly to them. I just wondered, what their feelings were, their thoughts were about your idea, your initiative. And also the cost implications possibly to customers. I'm an Amazon Prime member, but you're not always, you can also pay for deliveries. How will that affect deliveries with, say, Amazon, for example, with you adding your bit on or whatever it might be as well? So is there a cost implication?
Okay, I'll cover that. So, and Adam can always cover me if I get things wrong. But we're having to think about carriers from a strategic level and a tactical level. So at a strategic level, you're trying to engage head office. At the moment, being early feasibility stage, it's quite hard to get their attention. The only company who responded to my request, bearing in mind I said I was working for UK Cabinet Office, was DPD. Now, the reason DPD engage is because that they are positioning themselves to be the carrier of choice for cities who are also looking into consolidating, and they'll be running a publicly franchise scheme. So they're very keen to be involved in this type of work. The other carriers, quite frankly, are perhaps just not on this page in terms of strategic relationship. Even Transport for West Midlands can't get them in of them. So that comforted me. But we do expect that if we receive phase 2 and we've got something a bit more concrete to work with, we can expect them to come in and participate. If we have an actual pilot hub in operation in Stratford, something physical for them to come see and visit. But tactically, Adam has experienced that there's actually a strong case for participation, because at a regional depot level, they just want to do this at the best price possible, and we will be able to provide our service at a cheaper price than what they're doing at the moment. So, money has to talk in terms of tactical arrangements. Now, what will this do to the cost is the other question. As I say, it will make things cheaper for the customer ultimately, not more expensive, because at the moment, say Amazon get it through their really efficient logistics network, but then they employ last mile courier drivers to pick up stuff from Banbury, I think, and they create a big parcel load, a big stillage, and they'll sell that for 60 quid. So what we're doing is actually consolidating that. So yeah, we would be potentially reducing the cost. But what's more important for us is to ensure that it's not just about the cost. It's got to be something more than that. And what we're really trying to reach out is the retailers themselves. And if the retailers can see that what we're doing is reducing the carbon footprint of their online sales, then we would assume the carriers would be able to explain why they're participating in our scheme.
Okay, thank you very much. That's great.
Councillor Rolfe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Simon, who's going to pay for all this? In other words, who's going to pay for your distribution hub and the land that it sits on? Who's going to pay for all your vehicles? How's it going to be costed out?
Yeah, so we've been doing very thorough costing over the last fortnight. We've run numbers, and essentially, if you look at there's 2 businesses. There's the platform itself, and then there's the hub. The platform will ultimately make money by offering this to many cities. We need to scale. We need to be in 300, our target markets. There's 300 places like Stratford. We want to be in as many places of that as possible. Then there's the hub itself. Both need to make profit. Our modelling shows that the hub will make profit within 4 years. So it's a fully commercial opportunity. The question is just like everything, it's what happens, who's going to pay for the losses in the first 3 years. So we haven't got that answer yet. It could be private sector investment is willing to do this, but our gut feel is that there is a need for public sector to get involved. And that's why we're talking to the county. We think we've got a very good business case to accelerate this with public sector support.
But you need to find the land.
The land isn't such a problem. As Adam says, we probably need 3,000 square foot. So we've worked with Stratford District on land availability. There's plenty of existing buildings which could be repurposed for our use.
Okay.
Also, just to jump in there at the moment, in all towns, there are several hubs anyway. So we will actually be reducing the hubs needed because we'll be consolidating in one. So there's opportunity to take over an existing carrier's hub, sort of either pay them for it or rent it off them, that sort of thing. So we've got various options.
Yeah, as an example of that is in the case of Leamington, we would want to be positioned between Leamington and Warwick to serve both towns. And there's the Heathcote Industrial Estate. Yodel are there already.
Right, thank you. I've got no more questions, in which case could I sort of round this up, please? Thank you very much, Simon and Adam, for giving the presentation. I don't think there's anything that you're expecting Town Councillor to pick up as an action point from this. This was just for information only, but I think we'll all be interested to hear how you progress. So presumably you will progress this predominantly through the district and the county councils, will you? Is that what's your...
I suppose it's an open question. You're right, the presentation is for information only. I haven't come with a particular agenda. But then at the same time, for the council to note that I was awarded this project based on your letter of support. So just to note a big thank you for that, and to hope that support will continue through to my next stage application. To just note that I do believe passionately that the public sector has a role to play in here. We're not talking about heavy-handed regulation. We're just talking about investing in our future.
Yeah. Can I just check, is Councillor Jenny Fradley your contact point on the council?
Yes.
Yeah, so if as and when matters progress, we'll look to Councillor Jenny Fradley to keep us updated. And if need be, we can always come back and ask you to do a further presentation. But, that's great. Thanks very much for your time and coming along. It's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Again, you're welcome to stay if you wish.
I've got a screaming toddler. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. In which case, can we move on to our third presentation, which is from Sarah Aspley, CEO of the Town Trust. Sorry to keep you waiting, Sarah. But
that's okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, fine.
Yep, very good. I'm going to share my screen. So thank you very much for inviting me along to the council meeting this evening, and it's been fascinating to listen to those last two presentations. So look forward to particularly seeing the last one come to fruition. So let's just see if that's going to work. Can you see that?
Yep, I can. Yep.
Yep. Great. I'm going to try and move this over here so that I can do that. Hold on. Right, so that should be full screen now. Is that correct?
It probably depends how people have got their screens set up individually, but I can see that fine.
Good. Okay, yep. So thank you very much. I've been invited here tonight to talk about the Town Trust strategic plan for the period 2021 to 2025. The reason I'm here sort of well into 21 is that I think there was a previous agenda that was rather busy, so I stepped aside for something probably a lot more interesting than this. Anyway, let's see. I think I know most of you around the room. For those of you that haven't met me, my name's Sarah Aspley. I'm the Chief Executive of Stratford Town Trust, and I've been in post since the very end of 2018, so just over about 2.5 years now. Obviously, the last year has been particularly challenging for the Trust, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So I thought it would be helpful to start by sharing our mission and our purpose. So our vision, our mission or our purpose, they're often one and the same thing, is to maximise our assets and work in partnership to enhance the quality of life for the people of Stratford-upon-Avon. So this is a mission statement that was agreed between the trustees and the executive. It's different to our memorandum and articles that's handed down by the Charity Commission, into which we have our charitable objects, so the objects that we need to meet. And then our vision, so the thing that we're aiming for, the thing that we want to do if we get everything right, is to create a connected and vibrant community. So, nice and simple, but obviously big picture stuff. So I just wanted to start by talking a little bit about the impact that COVID had on the Trust. So this time last year, we'd just gone into lockdown. We were probably all just about to start our sourdough starters in jars, and what we found immediately was an immense amount of confusion and uncertainty, both in the community, with the groups that we were supporting, and in our tenants of our properties, our commercial properties. We saw an immediate increase in need, although typically people didn't quite know what that looked like, but there was a sense of panic, and we immediately saw a decrease in income. So our income is raised through our property portfolio, an investment portfolio. So we have around just over 100 properties in town, mixture of commercial and residential, and specifically 53 retail properties in the town centre. March the 25th is end of Q1. It's a day that's burnt into our brains here, where we would normally collect 95% of our rental income for the quarter to come. This time last year, we collected 25%. So that gives you an impact, an idea about what we felt was coming. Now, actually, over the course of the year, the team, the finance team, and the team in general have worked really hard to pull back on that. We haven't collected 95%. We're probably closer to 65, 70%, but a hell of a lot better than that initial 25% collection rate this time last year at the end of March. So we were in the process of writing our strategic plan when COVID hit, and we had a plan about launching it and presenting it and what we were going to do with it. We put everything on hold because we thought that maybe we were now writing the wrong strategic plan. We wanted to make sure that we were writing one that was going to respond to a societal change, the like of which hasn't been seen since the Second World War. So the structure of the strategic plan stayed the same in that I'll just move down to my next slide, in that it's built on 4 pillars. So the engine of our strategy is finance, investment and property. So without that delivering properly, we wouldn't be able to do everything else that we want to do. And then our other 3 strands are grant making, which is the physical manifestation of our success every year, community engagement, so how we engage with the community on many different levels, and placemaking. And that just recognises that as an organisation, we're unique. So we've got lots of property in the town centre, commercial property, but some of it's listed and historic as well. So we have a role to play in how we care for that and how we promote it. But we also look after several assets for the community, non-income generative assets. So the Guild Chapel is probably the jewel in our crown in that sense. Rowley Fields and the Lench Meadows, Warwick Road lands, are the key ones, but also the bandstand and the Swan Fountain down on Waterside. So what's our role as a placemaker? How do we create a sense of place? So 4 pillars for our strategy running across those 5 years. So the first one, finance, investment and property strategy. So the background and context of that is 99% of our income, as I've said, is self-generated. Bit more about that later as a result of our strategic planning. We have to meet our investment policy and our key objectives. So the finance and property committee will determine that policy on an annual basis, and we'll aim to meet those objectives, which has an ultimate goal of returning maximum income. And we needed to reflect the impact of the economic climate that was already in decline in terms of high street retail, and then the double whammy of COVID-19. So we went out to consultation. You'll remember this because I came and talked to you about our consultation process. So what we found in consultation was that people weren't aware of the level of grant making that we made. So until this year, the Trust has typically dispersed around £2 million a year in discretionary and non-discretionary grants, and people made all kinds of assessments either side of that about what our grant making level could be. There were plenty of suggestions about what we could do to boost our finance and investment portfolio. So we could use our void shops for community groups, for venues, pop-up galleries and performance spaces. We've done some of that already. So we've done a few pop-ups, and a suggestion that we really think about who we are as a property owner, curating our properties that delivers to a local community and visitors, but rather than just exclusively to tourists. So thinking about independent traders and more community-based activities. And of course, COVID just came along and helped us to really focus on those particular findings. So the objectives from our strategic finance and property strategy is to, number one, before all else, is to try to restore our gross income level to that which we enjoyed in 2019 and before. I doubt very much that we will achieve that in this year, and probably not until 2023 or 2024. May we see the returning levels. We need to refine and implement a property strategy that we commissioned before we went into lockdown last year. And so that was looking at the mix of property versus investments and whether we were weighted too heavily on the property side, thinking about all of our town centre properties and what value they have in terms of upper floors, creating, converting into residential so that people can come and live in the town centre, thinking about how we change that town centre demographic so that there's more of a nighttime economy maybe, or a need throughout the day. We need to develop a plan for a financially sustainable community hub. So that's Foundation House, which has been closed pretty much for a year, give or take. So what happens at the end of that lease period? We'll be working on that over the next 4 years. And we need to develop alternative funding streams. So I think one of the things I recognised when I arrived was that we couldn't just continue to rely on our property and investment portfolio. Rental income was already falling at that stage, and it's likely to fall yet further. And until whatever the next big thing is in terms of high streets and retail comes along, we need to think about how we can find some alternative funding. Now, that doesn't mean that we chase funding in competition with our beneficiaries, because that would be inappropriate, but we can achieve funding for some of our specific buildings. So, for example, we applied for some COVID recovery funding for Foundation House, and we were awarded £105,000 that helped us with 6 months worth of running costs for a closed building. So that's been very helpful in terms of bolstering our income. We're looking at a next phase of conservation for the Guild Chapel, and we're looking to achieve funding for all of that work if we can with a small amount of match funding from ourselves. I think we need to develop a proper third income stream with a proper strategy next to it. So then the next pillar is community engagement. The background of context of that coming out of our consultation was that there was a real feeling of disconnect across the town, communities divided. We really realised through this that it was important for us to listen and to engage in conversations with the different elements of our communities, and recognise that there are many different ways in which we can talk to communities or link with them, either through our grant funding or through Foundation House, through the Guild Chapel, through many strands of our work, through membership. So the consultation findings that came out relating to community engagement recognised that there was a real value in Foundation House, that for the I don't know, there's probably around 60 groups that use that building regularly when it's open and running, and therefore invite in hundreds of people every year to use that building. We have heard how valuable that is and how much people are looking forward to coming back. Interestingly, only 50% of the people responding to our consultation felt that the Town Trust were approachable. So we've got a bit of work to do there to make sure that people feel that they can come and talk to us, and we can improve on that percentage. And we heard reported to us both from young people and from other people talking about young people that they were facing a range of barriers to realising their potential within this town, where transport links are poor and housing is difficult. It's difficult to get on the housing ladder. There's a lack of affordable housing, and jobs tend to be in the sort of lower paid sector, service sector. So the strategic objectives from the engagement pillar is for us to make sure that we tell our story, the impact of our story, much more clearly, that we really light a fire under our community hub and make sure that it's a place where the community can come together to build meaningful relationships and act as advocates for it. We have to be really open and human in how we communicate, and I think we've done a lot of that over the last year. And that comes with its own set of challenges. We've stuck our head above the parapet for the Riverside project, and that's been a bit challenging at times, but better that we're facing those conversations than hiding behind a keyboard perhaps, and that we need to build a larger, more engaged and more diverse membership. So then the third pillar is around our grant making. The background and context for this is that we realised we are a place-based funder, so we need to always have a sense of place in our minds when we're awarding grants. That it's not necessarily, we're not causally led, so we are not wedded to one cause or another. So we have to think about people coming forward with cause-related applications, how that reflects within the local community. We must support the local community in everything that we do, it goes without saying. And there was a real need to champion and celebrate diversity, and I think perhaps we weren't doing enough of that. So the consultation findings, again, we saw a very clear sense of a fractured community coming through, a desire for more activities and places for families to coalesce, something around independent shops and community activities within the town centre, and a place where people felt that they didn't need to transact. So young people in particular said, we want a place that's ours, but we don't necessarily want to go somewhere we have to buy something, a coffee, a drink, a burger, whatever, that it's just our place that belongs to us. So some of the objectives falling out of our grant making strategy, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. We made a commitment to becoming a participatory grant maker. So this is really a bit of a buzzword at the moment, along with that word pivot that everybody's using all the time. So what that means is we work with you. So it's not a transactional relationship. You don't fill in a form and then you get a yes or a no. all of our funding starts with a conversation and a desire to work together on a project. That doesn't mean we deliver it, but we work in the best way to enable it with you. So that we need to collaborate with other funders and institutions, to get best practice, to share best practice, and to work out where groups, voluntary organisations, groups and charities could go to get other funding and not just come to the Town Trust. We absolutely need to commit to developing our grant making to value equality, diversity and inclusion. So that must ripple down into every single thing that we do. And we really champion innovation. So no conversation is, it's never too early to have a conversation with us about even the germ of an idea. So then the final strategy is placemaking. So placemaking, for those of you that are unfamiliar with the term, it capitalizes on your local community's assets, its inspiration and its potential, and it creates public spaces and a community culture that promotes people's health, happiness and well-being. So it's like healthy neighborhoods, if you like, a healthy neighborhood where you know your neighbors and you've got somewhere where you can come together, which could be a patch of grass or someone's front garden or something. At its best, placemaking is temporary, low cost and high impact. So it isn't a big installation. It isn't something that's permanent. It's something that grows up from the grassroots. So lots of you will have heard me talk about parklets in the past. So if there's one thing, if I could give you a bit of homework, go away and Google parklets. And a lady in Hackney who came up with this idea and was almost hounded out of Hackney by Hackney Borough Council until in the end they adopted her idea and trumpeted it as their own. So it's a really brilliant story. If you can have a look at that, that's the sort of thing I mean. A bit sort of guerrilla tactics, if you like, kind of just coming in urban, what's that, guerrilla gardening. So you come in and you do something a little bit naughty, but actually it promotes a conversation. It encourages debate. It's not forever. And then from that, we all have more conversations and we learn a bit more about each other. So the consultation findings around placemaking, there was a question mark around the relevance of the town centre for the local community. Again, that desire to make use of empty shops for community benefit, and again, that desire to create opportunities for people to come together more in spaces. So our objectives around placemaking are around working with partners like the Town Council, the District Council, and many of our other groups and charities, the key stakeholders in the town, the RSC and the Birthplace Trust, to create a stronger sense of place in the town centre and in the neighbourhoods around the town centre. So some of that is being addressed by the Stratford Strategic Partnership Group, which I think is a really valuable way of harnessing all of that energy and enthusiasm. We want to prioritise our green spaces for health and wellbeing benefits. So that's Rowley Fields and the Lynch Meadows. So we want to deliver some of that through the Riverside project. And we want to create places and opportunities through projects for people to come together, either around an activity or a place or something that they want to do. So then, moving into the summing up phase, you'll be pleased to know 5 more slides to go. Stay with me, one last push. So for us, communication is key for the next 5 years. We've got to keep communicating with people. I think, if I'm honest, I don't think we've done enough of that over lockdown, and that's been quite tricky. We've been at the forefront through Stratford Support, but it's been quite difficult to go out with good news messages to our membership when in fact the world is in a very difficult place. We've got a real commitment to the environment, both through Rowley Fields and the Riverside project, which we're invested in financially and emotionally. We want to increase our community engagement by developing our Foundation House community hub model. We commit to becoming a participatory grant maker, so that's working with you to develop your idea. We have to restore our income levels to those that we enjoyed in 2019. And as I say, that might take longer than a year, but that's what we're committed to doing. We want to make sure that the Guild Chapel continues to be a really valuable and celebrated resource for the town with its international standard of medieval wall paintings. So thinking about how we can highlight the chapel through some further conservation work. And last but not least, we need to build a solid fundraising strategy that doesn't cut across our beneficiaries, but actually helps to shore up our own income. So our top priorities for 21, as I've said, restore income to 2019 levels. We'll do that by taking an innovative approach to our commercial property portfolio. We need to change our approach to grant making. I just want to touch on that in a second, to make more of less money. We don't have as much money to give out this year, so we're going to need to be a lot more nimble and creative in how we make less go further. We need to reconnect and keep connecting with our membership. We need to reopen and celebrate our Foundation House family. Looking forward to doing that in around June, hope. We want to work with stakeholders like Stratford-upon-Avon Town Council on post-COVID economic recovery for the town. And we have a real commitment to the environment via the Lench Meadows and Rowley Fields, and then delivering our second phase of conservation for the Guild Chapel wall paintings. So out of our strategic plan, these are the key priorities. There are other things we're doing as well, but these are the key things we'll be focusing on for the remainder of this year, measuring ourselves against. So just to give you, because our grant making is open now, our grants rounds are open now. So I wanted to share that with you because I'd like you to be able to take that away to your own networks and encourage people to apply. So we've got 3 key themes for 21 coming out of our consultation. They are, unsurprisingly, young people, so creating connections and placemaking. And the strapline around our grant making is nothing about us without us. So really getting under the skin of the groups that are applying and helping them really create their own application. So they're not writing an application to achieve success with the Town Trust. It's genuinely about what they want and what they will be able to deliver. So what's next for that? Our grants are available from now until the 30th of September. The cut-off date for September means that we will be able to make awards up to the end of the year. Ideally, we will be making awards for projects up to about £20,000. But if a project exceeds that, you should always call for a chat. You shouldn't just take that as a hard and fast rule. It's always about being flexible. Our fast track grants remain unchanged, with applications up to £1,000 and a decision delivered in 10 working days. As I said, all applications start with a conversation. So please share with your networks. Come and talk to James and Catherine. If you look on our website, under the how to apply, there's a frequently asked questions box, and James's phone number's in there, so you can call him up and have a chat, or email applications@stratfordtowntrust.co.uk, and James or Catherine will call you back for a chat. And we promise to make the process as simple, smooth and fuss-free as possible. It's about really making sure we get that money out the door and in place and used for communities. So that's the end. That's me. Does anybody have any questions? Shall I stop sharing my screen?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Sorry, yeah. Councillor Voss.
Yeah, so this won't take my colleagues by surprise. So I've admired for many years much of what the Town Trust has done. I hope you'll view me as a critical friend. Nowhere in your key objectives was growing membership. Now, you may tell me you've had this question, it's been asked time and time and time again, and you're just not going to do it. But you talked about 50% of people not understanding or not being connected. You talked about young people and diverse groups. Here's the thing, though, and I don't know the numbers, but I'm going to say maximum 2,500 members, maximum. And I'm also going to tell you something you already know, and we all know, that the membership is getting older.
Yes.
And right. To me, an absolute priority to engage with this town and to meet your objectives has to be growing the membership. And I singularly failed to see over the last 20 years any significant impact in membership development and growth. And if this were a commercial organisation or a membership organisation that depended upon its membership, it would not be here any longer. And I think this needs to be absolutely focused on, because this is what the town is about. And I do not understand. And there are, and you'll say to me, well, send me in your suggestions, and I'll do it again, not for the first time. But here's the thing, everybody who gets a grant has to have a commitment, depending upon the size of their organisation, to get a percentage of those people. So it's a youth club, sign them up. If it's a school sports facility, sign those people up now. It's not difficult. It doesn't cost people anything. Get them to sign up and then find out what they need and benefit from, and they will understand and become more involved in it. And you may be thinking about these things, but I never, ever, ever, and I'm saying this now because it really upsets me that every year the same faces, the same names, the same numbers. I mean, there's got to be there's a lot of examples where people grow their organizations, but here the membership just is not growing and it's not changing its profile.
Can I?
Sorry, you can now. Sorry, Sarah.
Absolutely right. So on one of those slides, I won't go back through, it does say a more diverse and engaged membership, by which I would say it's implicit that's more people as well, but maybe I need to, but it's absolutely a priority, and it is in a job description for somebody here. It is part of their job.
So what numbers would be a happy, what are you targeting?
So we set ourselves a target before COVID. So I'm going to give myself a bit of a COVID let off here of increasing the membership by 1,000 within 12 months. So that would be now. I mean, there's no way we haven't done that in a million.
Understood.
So we try many different avenues to recruit. Genuinely, we don't ever stop trying to recruit. I think part of the challenge is that it is free, so therefore for lots of people it's valueless. So we have to find a way of giving people a value. So for me, it's about philanthropy. It can give you a nice warm feeling, but I can't give you 10% off in the shop. You know what I mean? I haven't got anything really.
You can't, but the problem is others can. So members of Stratford could.
Well,
no, we've been sort of, they don't want to. I know.
Yeah,
the problem
but
is
also you've also got to argue, Richard, if I can get 10% off in any shop in town, if I just go on to those voucher things, it's not hard, is it? If you're a canny shopper. But I tell you what did increase the membership more than anything in the last few years, Rowley Fields, hundreds of people joined.
Yeah, and I know because I was at the forefront getting them to sign, and I've got the list still, so I know about that. Issues always bring people out. Anyway, I don't want to hold the time.
I'm quite surprised that we haven't had an influx of new members because of Riverside. We were kind of braced for it, and we have had a clutch, so we've probably had 10 new members, which is quite a lot recently.
What we did at Rowley Fields, we got people to sign up at our various peaceful protests.
So you can join online now.
Sorry, can I just intervene? Thank you, Richard, for your point. People are saying we've gone on too long with presentations.
Oh, sorry.
So not your fault, Sarah. I just want to make sure that we keep things on track. So, Councillor Cleave, did you want to make a quick comment? Or
I just coming back on what Councillor Voss said. Absolutely agree. We need to have the membership, but Sarah and I have had conversations as well on ways that we can do it. So it is. I just wanted to say, it's definitely there. It's something, as with my guides before I was a trustee, we managed to get a grant, and it's something I ask all my parents in my groups to do, and it's something that we're trying to spiral out as well. So we've had these conversations, and it's definitely something that we want to do. Obviously now as a trustee, it's even more important that I want to push this membership, but those conversations are going on, and it is a priority.
Thank you. In which case, thank you, Sarah. You there? Sorry, you moved around on my screen. Thank you for the presentation. It's been really helpful. I mean, I know it already, but hey ho, lots of people will have seen that for the first time, and I just think it's it's really important that people get behind the town trust. Obviously, I'm a strong advocate, but don't want to be too biased. But yes, great stuff. So if there's no more questions, can I thank you? You are welcome to stay on if you wish.
Thank you.
But
thanks everybody.
Otherwise, right. Can I apologise to all the councillors and say, you're right, that's probably gone on longer than I expected, but I didn't want to be rude to our presenters who were actually talking a lot of good and common sense. So it's probably gone on slightly longer than I expected. If we want to take a short break before we come on to the agenda items, so if you've got 5 minutes just for a comfort break, and we'll reconvene. Reconvene. Yes, thank you. Right, at the moment I seem to be missing councillors Voss, Rolfe, Howe and Mackenzie. They are Richard Goodman. Kate's come back. You there? Yeah. You there, Councillor Howe? Thank you. Good. Right, we're all back. Okay, thank you. In which case, can we move on to item 17.1, which is to approve the calendar of meetings and review the date of the annual photograph. Did you want to say anything, Town Clerk, or are we just happy to vote on this? It's all in the papers. So we just need to vote three. Are we doing three separate votes here just to approve?
Yes.
Is that the way forward? Yeah. So the first one is to approve possible change to the date of the annual photograph. So this is a request from Councillor Cleave, who's not available on the original scheduled date. So we're looking to either move to the 16th of June or the 27th of September. Can I suggest that we go for the 16th of June, unless and then if we've got a problem, we do have a reserved date to go back to at a later time. So if we go for the 16th of June, so if we can put the poll up to vote on that, please, just confirm that we're all happy. Are you, sorry, Town Clerk, are you trying to put the poll up? Are you?
I'm afraid, Mr. Mayor, I can't see the poll. I can't launch the poll.
Oh, right. Oh,
you are logged in from another device.
Yeah, right, sorry, I've done it. Right, so sorry, it should all be there now for people to vote. Sorry, right. Okay, that looks to be fine. So we'll go for the 16th of June then for the date.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask you to make me co-host and then I'll be able to see, because I can't see anything, I'm afraid.
Right.
Little dots.
You're showing on my screen as being the host.
Oh, why can't I? Okay. Launch poll.
Right.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I think it's because Lisa was logged in under Sarah Summers, so it could be you need to look for Town Clerk.
I've got Town Clerk is on my screen in the list of participants as the host.
Oh, sorry.
No.
But I can't see anything, so I'm relying on you, I'm afraid.
Right. Okay. Right. So that was. So I've had 14 votes, all voting in favour of the 16th in June.
Just carried. Thank you.
Carried. Thank you. The next one is to agree.
Sorry, could I just?
Sorry, Steve, yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I think it's the 15th of June is a Tuesday, isn't it? Or am I looking at the wrong year?
The papers say the 16th.
Okay.
But it will be that Tuesday anyway.
It's the 15th, yeah.
Yeah.
The 15th.
Yeah. The second one is.
So we've got a town council, the accounts on the 15th of June as well.
Sorry, it is the 15th. It's my eyesight. On my board, it's the 15th.
Yeah, so we'll all be in for the accounts. So it's an opportune time for us to all to be there to have our picture taken. Right, and the second one is to agree that you'll please let me have my picture taken with the town council wearing the robe and chains. So I've actually got something for the scrapbook. So I'm hoping that's going to be okay. If you'd all vote to say that's okay. Thank you. 15 votes, all in favour. Thank you. And finally, can we approve the new calendar of meetings? You'll note that we've had to make some changes because we needed to put something in, some meetings in for the Planning Consultative Committee. So you've got an amended calendar. All the changes are marked on it. If we're all happy to accept those, can we vote again? Bear with me. Launch. Continue. I've got 15 in favour. Thank you very much. It's good. In which case, if we move on to 17.2, which is just to note and review the council's aims and objectives. Can I just say a big thank you to everybody for actually making sure that a lot of those aims and objectives have kicked off and moved forward during very difficult COVID times. So I think apart from ones that were going to be staged in the town hall, which have obviously had to be held over, we've made good progress on all of the others. Does anybody want to say anything, or could we just note that? No, in which case we can note it. Thank you. Item 17.3. I think. Well, can I pass this over to Councillor Coles just to talk?
Mr. Mayor, may I interject, please? I've had a request from the Environmental Strategy Panel. This item is removed from the agenda and not discussed. They want to look at it further before bringing it to the Town Council. Right,
okay, I understood. I thought Councillor Coles wanted to say something on the. No, you didn't. No, okay, right, exactly. It's just been withdrawn. Okay, then, thank you. Which is on to item 17.4, is to note the report on the cessation of virtual council and committee meetings and the measures required after 7th of May. I think this is probably one where, Town Clerk, it would be helpful if you gave a quick summary, although we've all read it and we know that we're going to be committed. I take it everybody's read the papers to start with. Yeah. Does anybody have any issues with anything in the papers? Councillor Rolfe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank the Town Clerk for the extremely detailed list of what we have to do and when we have to do it. I don't know whether I'm going, you know, when I come in for a meeting, I'm going to have that list with me, because I'm not sure when I walk in that door which way I'm going to go. But that list was amazing. You thought literally of everything. It was quite extraordinary. So may I thank the Town Clerk for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I echo Councillor Rolfe. I won't repeat it, Sarah. It was fantastic. My query would be, because we're now being told that we have to be present at council meetings, does that mean that, say, the councillor doesn't feel comfortable coming into a meeting, doesn't feel comfortable coming to a face-to-face meeting, if they give apologies so as not to attend, is the rule back again where it's a maximum of 6 months before attending a meeting? Or
yes. Yeah, the rule of apologies still stands and always will. And providing other council members accept those apologies, then you have 6 months and even longer, because actually the 6 month rule is if you don't apologise.
Right. So councillors will still have the opportunity of not attending.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Cleave.
Thank you. It's just a suggestion. I'll give a little bit. Obviously, I've got a bit of a background. I mean, at least 20% of people with COVID don't have symptoms, and this is what is concerning most of us. And while the evidence suggests that they're less likely to be infectious than people with symptoms, they can still transmit the virus. So it's important that we actually take the time to detect this. You know, we're lucky that we actually have an asymptomatic testing centre very close to there. It's something that the UK government is trying to push, that people go there, especially before all the vaccines have been rolled out for all age groups. So could I suggest that we take personal responsibility for everyone's health and safety in the council, for staff, councillors and potentially the public who may come in, that we take lateral flow tests before face-to-face meetings. This will protect as many people as possible and keep them safe, which is what we want to do. So it's something that obviously it's voluntary, nobody can be forced to doing that, but I would like to suggest that we take that initiative and keep everyone safe.
Can I, you'll probably know this better than anybody, but what's the opportunity for members to get a test at home kit? Is that
if I may come back, you can get them at you can pick up your home test kits from the COVID centre with symptoms, and the same as I believe District Council are doing some in the offices themselves. We could potentially have them there, but we want that hour before anyone, minimum of an hour before anyone shows up at the council offices. So you can get them, but I would recommend just going to the other place, which is where obviously the lateral flow test centre is. It's so close to the council offices. If we're coming into town anyway, if we can get in early, I would suggest doing that. But you can get home testing kits, the same as children from schools.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I personally have no reservations about attending council meetings, but I'm very concerned about requiring staff members, clerks of meetings to attend when they're not comfortable. And I would be for giving the town clerk the emergency powers that we did previously at the beginning of the pandemic to make decisions on our behalf, with the aim to reduce the number of face-to-face meetings that we need to have.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, should I propose that, or do we want more discussion on that?
I'm not quite sure how we pick it up. Town Clerk, can you just clarify? Is that something that we would need to propose and vote, or is it?
Absolutely. Yes.
Is it? Sorry. Or is it something that's best actually discussing what we want to agree rather than having the discussion at tonight's meeting? Do we want to take it away and decide on what is the best option?
I think we should actually look at the responsibilities, because it won't just be for me, for example, it would be with the RFO as well.
Yeah.
And as I said in various communiques to you in writing, this isn't a power grab by officers, and fortunately we have the means now to communicate efficiently without having to face-to-face. And so fewer people would need to be in attendance if it had all been discussed amongst yourselves, and then it's voted upon, and providing it's quorum, it's fine.
Right, but it would still need a quorate live in-person council meeting to approve those decisions.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Councillor Dyer.
I think my question might have just been partly answered. If it's difficult for you to go to the town council meeting in the town hall for various reasons, would it be possible for you to attend via Zoom and vote?
No, you will not be able to attend a town council meeting via Zoom and vote as of the 7th of May. So I think a lot of it will be, not necessarily informal, but internal meetings. And there will be an agenda. The meetings will have to be called, they have to be open for the public, and it all needs to be above board and transparent. So the public will still see what's on the agenda, and there'll be a debate at Town Council, but it would not mean that 18 of you would need to be there. 6 of you would need to be there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dowling.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is it possible that the members would attend, but the clerk wouldn't necessarily? The clerk could clerk it by Zoom, surely. The clerk doesn't have to physically be there, Sarah, does he? Or she, sorry.
That's the difficult one. I mean, potentially, yes, but if you're actually in the council chamber, then usually there would be an officer there. At the moment, you see, what I think will happen is that there will be hybrid meetings. That's what everybody is talking about, that there will be, the legislation will change to hybrid. And that would be fine, because then you can either be on Zoom or be in the office. But at the moment, I would suggest that when we return, then a clerk would be present.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I think it helps if town clerk is present and is able to, as questions arise during the meeting, for an officer to be present in person. Otherwise, if it's remote, they wouldn't be able to engage in any discussion. So I think we probably need it.
They would. If it's on Zoom, they'll be able to take part in any discussion. If they're on the TV screen in the corner, they'll be able to take part in any discussion. Answer any questions that we've got.
Is that right?
It's just the same as this meeting now. I mean, you can ask as many questions as you like, and
yeah,
you get on.
We are now, but after the 7th of May, we don't have the power to have a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, you do. Of course you do. As long as the members are all there. What I'm saying is, if the clerk is not comfortable in being at that meeting, the clerk could be on Zoom.
Sorry.
You cannot have Zoom meetings until after the 7th of May if you're at a meeting that a council is going to make a decision. Zoom is not allowed. You haven't got that technology. And that's what I'm saying, that it'll change, I think, to hybrid rather than full Zoom or full in person. That'll be hybrid, and then that's fine. You can have people presenting, like, for example, this evening, none of those people need have been in the town hall. They could have all been presenting to you either in your home or in the council chamber, because there'll be television screens. But you can't do it yet because the technology is not, the legislation is not there.
Not there, right? But we will have the technology to have our meetings recorded and sort of streamed live on YouTube in the same way as we are now. Yeah.
Yes, and that was one of my worries, because the meeting that I had with Dudley and Richard Lees, which was very useful and very helpful, which enabled me to write that great diatribe. The system that he needs to put in is dearer than what the Finance and Audit Committee authorised. I think it is in my report somewhere.
You put £15,000, but you did say that Dudley
it's nearer
would come
15
back,
than 10.
Come back and confirm. Councillor Ham, I'm very conscious that you've still got your hand up. I just wanted to see whether anybody had a comment, but I'm hoping you're going to propose that actually, as a council, we think it is a good idea for more delegated powers to be passed to the town clerk and the officers. We'll take it offline to actually finalise the detail.
Agreed. Yes. You put the words in my mouth, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
We'll need to vote on that. I'll just put the poll back up again. So is everybody comfortable with what we are voting for? So this is giving officers delegated powers, but we will agree the detail at a later, between now and the 7th of May. So the poll is coming up now. Sorry, it's be a poll. There's the poll. Councillor Alcock, did you want to say something before on that poll, or before the poll, or after, or
before, please, Mr. Mayor? Sorry, I just want to clarify exactly that. Currently, are we voting to give the town clerk and officers delegated powers, but we haven't specified what delegated powers we are giving?
The detail is still to be discussed and agreed, but in principle, that's what we're looking for. Yeah.
Right. Can I then confirm that this is a vote to discuss the delegated powers, not to grant them?
Well, I suspect we probably agreed that we were going to grant additional powers, but the detail of what those powers will be discussed.
Right, but how will we then decide which delegated powers we're giving and which we're not?
Because, well, that'll be part of the discussion.
Yeah, this is my concern, is that we're voting to give delegated powers without actually knowing what we're giving. Well, not even in a broad spectrum of it. We are just saying, yes, we'll do it, but we don't have any guidance there about in what capacity at all.
We are agreeing that in principle, it would be advantageous for the council, for the town clerk to have additional delegated powers on a temporary basis until we're back to normal. So that's all we're agreeing at the moment. Those
delegated powers that we give will come back to council for a vote.
The detail of those delegated powers will come back to council for discussion. Whether they'll come back to a proper council meeting or whether they'll be done by email is to be discussed. But you will have the opportunity to agree and confirm what powers are going to be given. Are you happy? No. Think about it, Councillor Alcock. And
I am.
Keep your hand up. Councillor Jenny Fradgley.
I have I have slightly similar concerns to Councillor Alcock. I think I would agree to a formal, the discussion to take place on as to what delegated powers could be granted, but I don't want to vote now on those powers being granted. So if that discussion is going to take place, I can agree to that discussion taking place. I would then like those powers to be come back to the council quite specifically for us to understand what powers are being given and what temporary basis, and a date on that temporary basis as well.
I'm quite happy with that. It's one of those. It's trying to find the right words. Yeah. We've agreed to have the discussion with an objective of might be a good idea for the town council, for the town clerk to have additional powers, but actually the detail to be discussed. And actually, if councillors don't like the detail, then they can veto it and not go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Howe, you've still got your hand up.
I guess the rationale is to reduce the number of physical meetings required. So depending on what powers are needed, if the council wishes to retain some of the powers, but by necessity would delegate some of those powers, that some of those meetings will not be required, thus reducing the risk for both members and officers.
Right. I think we would probably still need the same number of meetings. We wouldn't need to have all the councillors. We just need to have a quorum of councillors to approve, is my understanding.
In which case you wouldn't need to delegate any powers.
Town clerk, can you clarify?
Just reading point 34. When I wrote to you, if you remember, I sent you an email and I said, this isn't a power grab at all by officers. We would none of your officers, the town clerk, the RFO, or any of them, would ever do anything without discussing it with council. And I think that is the point in terms of we've discussed it with council. We could possibly be discussing it via email or on Zoom. And then it would go to the town council meeting, almost retrospectively to say, right, at the Zoom meeting, when you were all there, you all said that you wanted to buy a red bus. Well, I wouldn't then go and buy a blue one or not buy one. I mean, the whole idea is just to make this transient period until the government sees sense and put better legislation back in place to actually ensure that we can work. You did this exactly when the pandemic first started. You gave me more delegated responsibility so that we could get through it. All we're asking is that we do the same again. And in fact, the government is suggesting that you do that, as does NALC. But don't ever think for one moment that I won't be sending you an email or getting on a Zoom, because I will be.
Right. So just to clarify then, if we agree over Zoom prior to any meeting that we're going to buy a red bus, does that item actually have to come to the council for a quorum to vote on? Or would that it still would need to come?
Unless you have given me delegated responsibility to make that decision, and I will have made that decision by either sending you an email or having a Zoom call to say, do you want red, blue or nothing?
Right, so we could clear it without it coming to the
absolutely.
That's
the whole point.
Yes, but the meeting will still go ahead because there might be other things on the meeting that need to be discussed.
We have to still have council meetings.
Yes.
But if I've got more delegated responsibility, fewer things would need to come to council, and therefore meetings are going to be very much shorter, which is what they're saying. Please keep your council meetings
short as possible. Yeah. Right. The poll was unanimous, so we'll agree to progress it and discuss what additional delegated powers might be appropriate for you in the interim period. Thank you. Councillor Cleave.
Yeah, could we just get everyone's thought based on what I said about the lateral flow testing? Is that something that all the councillors, because if we all had negative tests, surely that would put more people at ease, staff as well as the councillors? What are everyone's thoughts on that?
Anybody? Well, oh gosh, now then. Councillor Rolfe, I'm not sure you had your hand up before, so.
I wanted to ask the question about do we have to agree now Dudley Simpson's new invoice?
I was going to come back to Dudley. Yeah, okay, thank you. Councillor Dowling.
Yeah, I have 2 lateral flow tests every week. They're no problem at all. I don't know why we just have them anyway. It's it's no problem whatsoever. So I can't see why we can't agree to Jill's request to do a lateral flow test, and then everybody be happy and know what's happening.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Jenny Fradgley.
My only issue is actually timing. I mean, you're talking about an hour before a meeting. It's quite difficult to fit that in with everything else that's happening to actually then hang around town for an hour. I mean, how does it, just asking, how does it work?
Do you want to come back on that, Councillor?
Yeah, if I could, no, I said up to an hour before. So if people, to save 10-minute trip, if you went to the other place to get it, it takes sometimes up to an hour to get the results, but you could do it in the same day, you could do it the day before. It's just up to an hour. You don't want to leave it closer to that town council meeting, but you need that time to get the negative test.
Yeah, I think the question of how long, would you be happy with the lateral flow test 48 hours before the council meeting or 72 hours? So we need to just agree the time scale of what we're looking for. Yeah, Cleve, Councillor Cleve.
So NHS staff and school staff and most front-facing staff are asked to do it twice a week. So within that time, you might have 72 hours before it, but even if we said 48 hours, it would still give you a good indication.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
I'm just wondering, is it easy to get a lateral flow test, and do you have to book it in advance? And also then you've got another layer of possibility of transmission because you're going to another place where possibly there are people who have got COVID.
So was there an answer to that, Councillor Cleve? You're probably best placed to.
Yeah, I was going to, well, I go there twice a week. It's very clean. They keep it's all separate. As long as you follow the guidelines of washing your hands and wearing a face mask until the point where you do it, there's just as much chance of going into a shop. There's less of a chance than going into a shop or somewhere out and about. It is completely safe, COVID safe.
Yeah, or you could get a home testing kit.
And get the home testing kits too if you don't want to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Alcock.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Mackenzie, I picked up 2 boxes from the leisure centre. I did interact with another person while I was there because everybody was socially distanced. As a family of 5, we do ours twice a week, every week, with the children being at school, and I'm happy to bring in and show anybody who requires to see it the text message that I registered the result on. So you can do them at home because you get a text message to your mobile to say you've done it, it was negative, there you go. So there is no hanging around at a meeting. Do it at 8 o'clock in the morning and bring the text message in when you receive it. So as well as having the option of going to the other place if you're out and about in town anyway. There are a lot of ways to get the lateral flow test. It's very simple to do, as Councillor Dowling said. And yes, I think that would be an added comfort to everybody who is attending meetings. So yes, I will, Councillor Cleave, if it is a proposal, I will second it.
Right, I've got one. Before we go to a proposal, Councillor Coles, would you?
I think probably everything said. I do mine twice a week from work. We get them in a box of 7. I'm sure. Can you pick up more than one at a time from the centres? Because we just, yeah, you do. So it's really quite straightforward. It's a bit ironic doing the test, finding it's negative, and then getting the system telling you you've just had a negative test. But I mean, I've done over a dozen of them now, and it's just bits in the routine. Yeah, I wouldn't have any problem recommending it. I could be a thirder. I wouldn't have a problem. Yeah.
Do you want to put a proposal forward, Councillor Cleave, and we'll do a quick poll?
Yeah, may I just propose that we as a council take responsibility for everyone's health and safety, the staff, the councillors and the public, by taking lateral flow test before sometime 48 hours before the meeting, any face-to-face meeting.
Any council meeting?
Any face-to-face council meeting.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Right. I'll just put a poll up then, just to ensure that's going to be. Councillor Ian Fradgley, did you have something to? Sorry.
Well, I wanted to ask a question.
Ask a question.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had both my vaccination jabs. Do I also have to be tested?
My understanding is that even though you might not catch it, you can still pass it on. So I think the answer would be yes. But again, Councillor Cleave is nodding. Is that correct advice?
Yeah. Even having your 2 vaccinations, the 2 vaccinations should stop you getting it severely. It doesn't stop you becoming asymptomatic or having smaller symptoms that you can still pass on to someone who would catch it worse than you. So the vaccine doesn't stop you getting it, it stops you getting it in a really bad dose. So yes, you can still pass it on even if you catch it and are asymptomatic.
Thank you. Just Town Clerk, everybody's voted and approved that, so we can note that as being an action that we will all have lateral flow tests before council meetings. Yeah. Thank you. Right, just going back to the point on the cost then from Councillor Rolfe. I mean, the cost is higher than we expected, but I think one of the very positive matters arising out of the last 12 months is actually the streaming of our council meetings and the wider reach that it gives us. So I'm hoping that council will consider that an initiative worth continuing, and although the cost is probably slightly more than we expected, we still want to carry on. But Councillor Rolfe, did you want to say anything in favour or against? You?
No, actually, it was on the previous point, I'm afraid, Mr. Mayor. I don't think we all agreed to have a lateral flow test. I think we agreed that we would take responsibility ourselves for doing what we do. in other words, some may not take that response. Some may not have a lateral flow test. Some may decide not to turn up at the meeting.
If people choose not to turn up to the meeting, they can do whatever they want. If they're turning up to the meeting, that vote was, if you're turning up for a council meeting, you've agreed to take a lateral flow test.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Yeah. Councillor Coles.
Sorry, this is for the next point about the cameras. I just wanted to ask if we were comfortable and absolutely sure that we had a value for money in terms of the increased cost, if we'd had any comparison with anywhere else, or whether we felt it was within sorry, it's very late and I can't think of the words. Are we sure we're paying the right amount of money? Do we have a comparison for it? Or are we comfortable that this is within an acceptable frame in comparison to other suppliers? That was the only question.
Yeah, well, I'll defer to Town Clerk, but I think my view is that Dudley is our preferred supplier and we are comfortable with what he does for both us and other bodies, but whether we have to get a separate quote, I don't know. Town Clerk, can you clarify?
May I defer to Councillor Howe? He probably would be able to give you a better indication of whether it's, I mean, Dudley is tried and tested and we've known him for many years. And I don't for one moment think that he would be out to do us, if you like. He did say that actually he was quite surprised that the figures went to council, the previous figures went to council, because he said if you worked out the amount of equipment that was needed, it was never right. So it was always more than £10,000. But no, the answer is no, I have not been anywhere else.
It's not that I need you to go to somewhere else, it's just as long as we've looked at it, because it is higher and we're comfortable with it and can then move on, just to ask the question.
Yeah. Councillor Howe, do you want to comment?
I think I'd need to see a more detailed proposal than this, because there's obviously installations not included in this, and it's not finalised. I can't scrutinise this from the information provided, so I'd need to take that offline, unfortunately.
How quickly do we need to make a decision? Town Clerk.
As soon as possible, because he's actually got to install it, and order it, etc., etc. But you know, yes, I quite accept that. And it's useful to have Councillor Howe who can have a look at it and say yay or nay, which I think we agreed last time when we were going to put it in, that you would have a proper look at it.
Would we be okay deferring this until next town council on the 27th of April, or is that going to be too late?
Yes, it's too late.
Too late.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I can contact Dudley tomorrow and say, could you send out, could you give us a very detailed spec, which we would give to somebody who is coherent with systems such as yours.
And we can agree and approve that offline, well, by email, if needs be.
I mean, as long as we can sort of make an agreement tonight to say it can't be more than £15,000, and that Councillor Howe will have a very good look at it to see that we are getting value for money and the system that we actually need, because this isn't just to cover this period, it's going forward. Fortunately, the system that he's putting in, even if we go back to the rectangular desk formation that we used to, then he can just tweak those cameras in terms of changing the angles. So we wouldn't need, a completely new system. It would be exactly the same, just with tweaks. And every station would have audible, which would be good. So yeah, I'm quite happy with what's been suggested. There will be 3 cameras, one facing the dais, and 2 from the front, but looking at you as councillors going backwards into the room. So you'd be heard and you'd be seen. And the RFO would be the cameraman, or another clerk. It will be necessary to have somebody on those cameras when there's a meeting, because if, for example, Councillor Cleve wanted to speak, we'd need to actually, and it was on a camera over the other side of the room, somebody would have to click it so that you're picked up. It probably will not be possible to sort of what I call zoom into you. It would just be a question of the camera will be in the right place and you'd hear them and would hear you, for example.
Right. From the demonstration that you had the other day, do you think it's worthwhile some councillors being present and actually doing a proper test and recording it, see whether so councillors can see that it's going to work and everything? Is that a
absolutely, and Dudley would want that before we went live, because one of the things we can't do is go live and it all goes wrong, because the first meeting we will be doing will be mayor making. So it's very, very important that it's working. But he has said that he would be present for the first couple of meetings, so that it is working properly and we're all au fait, and that officers are being trained in how to use it, because we can't expect the RFO to be doing cameramen every meeting.
Yeah. Okay. A few questions. Councillor Cleve.
Thank you. Ironically, we talked about streaming meetings such as mayor making back when Councillor Rolfe became mayor, and we said, isn't it a shame that we can't stream it to the wider world in a way? It's almost been forced upon us. My question is, obviously, Councillor Howe is going to check on the prices specifically, but ongoing costs, you've just mentioned that obviously we might need an additional staff member to use the cameras. So that's obviously potential ongoing cost. Are there any other ongoing costs other than that initial, say, payment of 15,000 that would add to the budget?
No, I don't believe so. I think it would be the ongoing cost. Now, Dudley contacted the RFO yesterday to say, it's very, very easy. It's very easy. So if it is very, very easy, then potentially that equipment could be handled by the clerk of the committee, and you wouldn't want to. I think with Zoom and with polls and with hands up and whatever, it's quite difficult for a clerk to sort of follow what's going on and be cameraman at the same time. But when I first started this, I never thought I'd be able to do this. So it's like driving a car. You can't drive a car, can you? Until you can. So we'll see. But I think we need to put some faith in Dudley. If he says it's easy, then it is.
Yeah.
And certainly we could get Lisa on the job. She'll be good at it.
Councillor Alcock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very concerned on the timescale we've got for this, because we do only have until the 7th of May to have everything installed, everything ready to go, ready for the very first meeting. My other concern is in delaying our saying yes to look at specs and whether we're paying the right cost, etc. Is we're not the only council who'll be having to do this at this time. Every single council in Warwickshire, every single council in the country are going to have to be looking into doing this type of upgrade. Though I am concerned that if we delay for too long and then go to Dudley or whomever and say, right, you can go now, and they'll come back and go, with what? There's a delay on getting equipment. There's going to be a delay on getting it installed. And we have got a very short time frame thanks to central government.
Yeah.
So I understand, Tank, like you said, you could get the specs and the details from Dudley, but very, very quickly. But then how quickly could Councillor Howe be able to go through it all? Bearing in mind he's rather busy at the moment as well. I know what that busyness is like. And then come back to everybody to say, well, this is what I think we ought to do, or this, before then we pass it back on to Dudley or to look for a different quote or whatever. I'm just very, very concerned that if we don't make a decision tonight, it could delay it beyond our time limit.
I'll have a think about that. Could I ask other people who've got their hands up just to comment before I come back on what I think should be the answer? Councillor Dyer.
I know with modern camera systems, it's very easy. You can have remote positions. You just press a button and the camera moves to what's such and such a position and such a zoom. So I've seen people train fairly quick on these systems. So that should be no problem.
Yeah. Councillor Coles.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just think we need to check. I mean, I appreciate that, you know, we want to get it done quickly, but we also need to get it done properly and appropriately, as it is quite an expensive system. So I would be worried that we didn't check the specification and that we felt comfortable spending that amount of money that we hadn't actually, you know, made sure what the spec was and had it another look, because we're not getting a triple quote or anything.
Yeah. Councillor Howe.
2 points. The drive for this in mare making, we may not need the full kit for mare making. So if we also don't necessarily have to present or stream the mare making if that's if that was the decision that people wanted to make in the to get a better scrutiny over the system that we're investing in. But however, if we weren't able, if the delay introduces the ability of not getting this kit available in time for mare making, you know, quite easy to do, install a temporary kit that will get us through mare making, so that can still happen.
Yeah.
We don't need the full installation to do mare making. Absolutely.
Yeah. Councillor Voss.
Yeah, Councillor Alcock's point is well made, and for this particular reason, that we should therefore be talking to perhaps the lead councils, Warwickshire, Stratford District, and other town councils in a similar situation, and find out what they're doing. And who knows, we love Dudley, but who knows who people know who have already perfected this technique, and we may not have to have any of the pain or aggravation of trying to work out whether it's right and it works. So I would recommend we spread the inquiry across the council network and see if somebody's come up with a template. We may not need to reinvent this particular wheel.
Councillor Dowling.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've listened to what everybody said. Can I just tell you that Dudley Simpson is an expert in his field. He's been doing this sort of thing for the council as long as I've been here, which is 21 years. And never once has he attempted to voice anything upon us that we didn't need. I'm with Councillor Alcock. I think that we should go ahead with this as soon as we possibly can. Thank you.
Councillor Dyer, have you? No, it was legacy hand, was it? Right. So can I?
Not to. Holy, I hate to keep plugging Holy Trinity Church, but Holy Trinity Church has just had a brand new system for streaming installed. Normally they use Dudley Simpson like everybody else, but I found a very competitive price elsewhere, and people have trained up very, very quick. So you can either Holy Trinity, Andy, if you want to look at what they've got, or dare I suggest, it being Easter, you watch the Sunday morning service on the new system. It starts at 10 o'clock.
Thank you.
That's Mr. Mayor, that's useful, and I will contact Andy Winter. The one thing I would say, and it's very interesting because we had a loop system put in the town hall, and the organisation that put it in was not Dudley. And it was Dudley Simpson who actually said to us, did you know that when you go into confidential session and you don't turn your loop off, that everybody wearing the loop can hear outside? Now, we were sold something without that information. Can you imagine that we were having confidential sessions with people just being able to hear? And also in the town trust and the district council, systems were put in that had to come out, and Dudley was called in to sort it all out.
Yeah.
And I must say, from what Councillor Dowling has said and from Councillor Victoria Alcock, it's actually often when you have to do something and you want it to be done well, it's who you know. And I do know with hand on heart that Dudley Simpson has served this town council extremely well since I've been here.
Yeah. My personal view listening to this, so just trying to summarise, is I think going forward we need to be able to continue to live stream the meetings, because that's been really beneficial. I'm comfortable with Dudley doing it. I appreciate that there might be a significant cost that we might draw breath on, and so I think it's important that we see his costs and we get a feel from Councillor Howe just to sanity check that it's a reasonable cost. I think if the cost, let's say the cost came back as 25,000, then I think we would say we need to look at alternative providers, on the understanding that it's very unlikely that that alternative provider would be able to put something in situ for mare making. So at least we understand what we're doing. But my gut feel is I'd like to go ahead with Dudley Simpson, but he needs to clarify the costs first. And if we can get those costs run past Councillor Howe and sanity checked and approved, that would be my recommendation. But in fact, I'm happy to put that as a proposal. Would anybody like to second that? Councillor Lee, thank you. I'll put a poll up. So we are putting a poll up to actually ask for Dudley Simpson to do a detailed cost assessment. It will go to Councillor Howe to sanity check, and provided we are comfortable with the cost, that's what we'll go with. The poll is on the screen. $13, $15. Yep, thank you. Unanimous and carried. Thank you. So I think that's everything on 17.4. 17.5 is to agree the date for the town meeting. Follows very much on from the previous conversation. So I think we could, town clerk will correct me if I'm wrong here, but we have the option of doing it virtually before the 7th of May, or we have to do it live after the 7th of May in the town hall. And actually the preferred option is to do it virtually, and the proposed date is the 29th of April. So has anybody got any comments before we ask for you to approve that? No, in which case, can you approve the town meeting being on Thursday, the 29th of April?
Just, Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
What time? Because they're usually earlier. What time would that be? It's just that's also a youth council day. So as long as it's after 6.
I would probably say we go for 6 o'clock as we've done for normal. Yeah.
Thank you.
In the past, we've always had our town meeting at 7:30.
Oh, right.
It's got to be later because it was a public meeting. I just need to check on the legislation whether you can have a town meeting at 6.
Okay.
It has to be later than you know. At other times you could have meetings really whenever you like, but with particularly the annual assembly, there are timescales. So I'll need to look at to make sure that this is okay.
That's fine. Time to be confirmed, but it will not be before a start time of 6 o'clock, but it might be 7:30. Yep. Okay, that's fine. All right. Thank you. That's all done. Right. Is that it? Is that, sorry, is the Town Clerk, can you just confirm there's nothing else in your report that we needed to discuss?
No, thank you.
No. In which case, on to item 18, any verbal ward reports that people want to bring for information purposes. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep this as brief as possible. So I'd just like to give foresight to Town Council a potential new event, which I would like to take to the next Civic Heritage and Events meeting in May, should you approve. It would be to create a Stratford-upon-Avon Games to offer all residents of Stratford the opportunity to participate in sports and pub games. A competitive spirit would be strongly combined with community spirit, but that through developing relationships within the teams created in each ward and neighbouring wards. There is a strict rule that participants have to reside within the ward that they represent. Typically 15 events are organised over a 6-month period from June through to November. This could either become an annual event or every 4 years. Obviously, under current climate, if it was to proceed, all events would be subject to the relevant COVID restrictions for each event. Thank you.
Did you want us to discuss that now, Councillor Taylor, or were you just raising it as a...
Well, I would actually like to know if because obviously the next Civic Heritage and Events meeting is the 11th of May. So I would like the opportunity to be able to take that forward if everyone's in agreement to that particular meeting.
My gut feel, arguably anything that promotes exercise would get my vote, but I'd be concerned about getting ahead of ourselves and putting something in place before the COVID restrictions haven't gone completely. And I think I'm not quite sure who the workload would fall upon, but I'm not sure that councillors organising teams for 15 events is yeah. It
wouldn't be for this year. It's planned for 2020. The first one would be 2022.
Oh, right. Okay. It gives us plenty of time to think about it. In which case, I'm happy for you to take it to the committee. But has anybody got any comments on that particular point? I've got lots of hands up, but I can't. They probably preempted. We might come.
Yeah, we did.
Sorry, you had your hand up for something else. Was that? Yeah. Okay. Well,
no.
If somebody's got a comment on something else,
I've got my hand up. I've got my hand up for this item.
For the next item. Okay.
I have my hand up for this item.
For this
Likewise.
Item. Okay, Councillor Dowling. Then. Yeah, Councillor Dowling.
I think what a fabulous idea that is. Absolutely fabulous idea. I was watching a TV programme at the end of last week. It was one of the Antiques Road shows or something like that. And there was a town somewhere else where they'd had these games for over 100 years. And I think it's an absolutely brilliant idea. And if Councillor Taylor can pull it off by pulling people together, it also goes with exactly what Sarah Ashley said about community, pulling the communities together. So the town trust could be involved in that in some way. I think it's a fabulous idea. And I think we should give Councillor Taylor the permission to go ahead and see what he can put together.
Thank you. Councillor Voss, did you want to speak on this?
Yeah, very simply, it's on his watch, Councillor Taylor's watch as mayor, and this is where much Wenlock started. Who knows, in 100 years' time, what Councillor Taylor may have started. So over to you, Councillor Taylor. Happy to support.
That was the one, Much Wenlock. That was where I was watching it.
No, what about Much Wenlock?
Thank you. Councillor Alcock, was this on a separate or different new item?
Mine was a verbal ward report, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. Go on then.
Do you want it?
Yes, please.
Right. From the 6th of April, the Humpback Bridge at Bishopton will be closed for 6 weeks. But it will be open to pedestrians, and huge thank you goes to Councillor Jenny Fradgley for helping with that situation. So residents in Bishopton are happier, but obviously for the likes of Councillor Dowling, your taxis will have to take a different route to hit the Bishopton. And that was it.
Thank you. Councillor Warren Howells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, just a reminder about the time capsule. If all items could be with the town hall, in the town hall by Friday, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Fradgley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask Councillor Alcock if pedestrians over the canal bridge also included cyclists.
Get off and push your bike, I suspect.
I suspect exactly, Mr. Mayor. If you get off and push your bike, you are a pedestrian.
Right, is that a virtual hand, Councillor Alcock? Councillor Ian Fradgley answered. Right, right. I've got no other hands up. I think the gist of just going back to Councillor Taylor, is Councillor Taylor speak to civic heritage and events, and that will be picked up there. Item 19, Town Clerk verbal report. Anything else to add?
Yes, just very quickly. I had the District Council on the phone urgently today because their annual meeting is coming up, and their council chamber is just not big enough to house all the councillors, plus the public that they have to be able to allow to the meeting, as do we. So as of the 12th, then, you know, we're a public building, and so we're open. And I invited them to come down today to look at our council, our ballroom and anteroom. And they are hoping that they will be able to hire it from us, and also hold some of their planning meetings going forward. So I just thought I would notify you of that, and also that I will be sending them the list of what you can and cannot do at a council meeting, like going up the stairs or And the other thing is on Friday, it's the last day of applications for our committee clerk. So far to date, I haven't received a single one, which is very worrying, very surprising, actually. I would have thought that with what's been going on, that there would be a lot of interest. But nothing has come about it. So if we don't get any interest, then I'm going to need to call another personnel committee meeting so that we can discuss what we're going to do. That's it. Thank you from me.
Thank you. In that case, if there's nothing else, I'll bring this meeting to a close, and the next virtual meeting of the Town Council will take place 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 27th of April. Thank you all. Thank you for your time. I think that's the longest meeting that I've been in, and 3 hours. I'll take full responsibility. I'm sorry. And as way an apology, you're all invited to the virtual Mayor's Parlour for a drink if you want to stay on. And I suspect most of you all want to go and have something to eat, but
got to go and cook supper.
I was going to say, give me a couple of minutes to find me to get a drink. That's probably the thing. But please stay on. Yeah. Oh, can we
remove off YouTube, Mr. Mayor, please?
Yeah, sorry. Sorry.